People today often wonder why the speech in old movies made here in Hollywood sounds different from the way people tend to talk today. In fact, many of those old Hollywood actors seem to talk in a somewhat British way. The terms mid-Atlantic and transatlantic accent are often applied to this kind of speech. Well, those terms are used for all kinds of mixtures of British and American accents, which can arise for various reasons, and those different kinds of mixed accents certainly deserve at least one video of their own. But in this video, I want to focus specifically on Hollywood speech. If you search online, you can find countless articles and videos talking about the old Hollywood speech and telling pretty much exactly the same story as if they've all been based on a single Wikipedia article of mixed accuracy.
What you're hearing is the transatlantic or mid-Atlantic accent.
They all begin by telling you that the old Hollywood accent was fake.
Instead of naturally evolving, the transatlantic accent was
Not real.
Made up.
Fake.
Fake.
Pure affectation.
Invented.
Entirely fabricated.
Completely made up.
False.
Synthetic.
Synthetic. Artificial. Contrived. False. Phony. A fake accent. It's a fake accent.
They all tell you that this accent was pretty much the creation of an Australian phonetician called William Tilley and his Canadian student Edith Skinner,
It can all be traced to
One guy.
one woman.
William Tilley.
Edith Skinner.
who wrote a book called
Speak with distinction.
Speak with distinction.
Speak with distinction.
Speak with distinction.
It was forced upon children in posh northeastern schools, and studios made their actors use it.
Studios told their actors to learn Skinner's accent.
Actors who wanted to keep working had to pick up the mid-Atlantic accent.
And they all give pretty much the same list of performers who used this accent. Above all,
Cary Grant or Katharine Hepburn.
Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant.
they all tell you that this fake pseudo-British accent was non-rhotic, so that it didn't pronounce the R sounds in words like father and partner. They'll tell you it had bath broadening, so that people would say
Dance.
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 They'll tell you that it resisted T-flapping, so we had pronunciations like better instead of better. And they all tell you that the fake accent faded away as America became less elitist and Hollywood developed a taste for realism. Now, there's more than a grain of truth in all of this. There was indeed an accent often referred to as American theatre standard that was heavily influenced by British received pronunciation and was indeed taught to many American actors, and which can be heard from a lot of old Hollywood performers.
Now let me hear you read your line.
And I can't stand him.
And I can't stand him.
And I can't stand him.
But attributing the speech styles of old Hollywood movies to this one fake accent is a gross oversimplification. Reality is more complex and far more interesting. It would be particularly mistaken to conclude that if it weren't for this fake accent, old Hollywood movies would simply have used the general American that we hear today. When oil was discovered here in the 1890s, the population of Los Angeles was about 50,000. There was no local accent. And in the early 20th century, all the major Hollywood studios were founded by Jewish immigrants from Central and Eastern Europe who came here from the East, mostly from New York City. Quite naturally, they set about importing talent from New York and the East and Europe. Remember that right up until the Second World War, there were more people in New York City than in the entire state of California. So essentially, Hollywood began as a New York enclave, and its founding accents were those of the East Coast and of Europe. Ironically, the articles and videos that peddle the fake accent story are themselves, in a sense, peddling a myth that real Americans spoke rhotic General American, and any British-sounding features such as non-rhoticity, R-dropping, can only be attributed to indoctrination with a fake accent. The accent in question was supposedly invented by William Tilley, a real phonetician, but an odd one. As a school teacher in Australia, he'd had to be warned not to beat children so much. He went somewhere more to his taste, Prussia, where he taught German with a rod of iron, to quote Daniel Jones, whom he introduced to phonetics. With World War I, his beloved Germans no longer wanted him, and he ended up in America, which he despised, teaching extension classes in New York, mainly to school teachers, and advocating World English, which was substantially just British received pronunciation. Remember that America hadn't yet got a standard accent of its own. Tilly developed a cult following, including Edith Skinner. They ranged from snobs to full-blown racists. Some of them tried to teach World English to New York school kids. Others set themselves up in the theatre world. But there are two big problems with the legend of the all-conquering Tilly Skinner fake accent: chronology and diversity. Firstly, so much of what's attributed to Tilly and Skinner was already widely established before they had the slightest influence. Secondly, old Hollywood films featured all kinds of speech, and even the examples people give of supposed Tilly Skinner pronunciation are so varied they clearly aren't one specific accent. Take Rhoticity. The simplified story, which I've told myself often enough, is that English was originally rhotic, pronouncing all the historic written R's, and these rhotic English speakers settled America, after which England, but not America, became non-rhotic. A more detailed account divides Britain and Ireland into North and South. The first settlements were southern Brits settling in New England, Virginia and Pennsylvania. The second bigger wave from northern Britain and Ireland went further inland. After the United States was born, the rhotic Scotch-Irish spread west, and just as England went non-rhotic, so did much of the American eastern seaboard. Hollywood was colonised primarily from the east, and to a not inconsiderable extent, as we'll see, from England and the British Commonwealth. As John McWhorter has pointed out, the non-rhoticity of the eastern seaboard had various causes, not just ongoing British influence on the coastal USA. And American non-rhotic accents differ from British non-rhoticity in often having an R-coloured vowel in words like nurse and or lacking the linking R. But the upper classes of the Northeast developed an accent that dialect coach Jessica Drake, herself a student of Edith Skinner's, calls Northeastern Elite, and this is more likely to have shown influence by British received pronunciation.
It was a real accent. Loads of people spoke that way.
Northeastern Elite developed long before Tilly arrived, and like RP, it would almost certainly have been learned natively by many, like Franklin D. Roosevelt, so often used as an example of the supposed invented accent.
Starting in the 1920s, Mid-Atlantic accent came to be adopted by elite boarding schools in the Northeast, including the Groton School, where FDR was educated. That's why FDR says,
"The only thing we have to fear is fear itself,"
dropping the R at the end of fear. Starting in the 1920s,
but Roosevelt had attended Groton School in the previous century, and the tradition of adopting British-sounding speech features on stage and in formal public speaking went way back. Dudley Knight tells us, at the beginning of the 20th century, American actors in classical plays all spoke with English accents, which were still considered the norm of elevated diction.
This is Burton Holmes. For more than half a century I've been travelling all over this wonderful world of ours.
That's filmmaker Burton Holmes, inventor of the travelogue. He was born into wealth in Chicago in 1870. I don't know if he sounded like that as a boy, but he was in his 50s by the time Tilly's brigade got to work on New York school children and actors. And we can go back a lot further than that.
We are the veterans of the Civil War, 61 to 65. This flag is of the Hawkins Zouaves, New York. Now salute.
And by the 1930s, as Hollywood transitioned from silent films to talkies, Edith Skinner became the go-to speech coach and consultant for film studios.
Skinner's influence on the Hollywood stars of the 1930s was precisely zero. She didn't even publish her book,
Speak with Distinction,
until 1942, though the Daily Mail actually changes this to get the fake accent story to work.
Unfortunately, there have been things put into print that have claimed that she was in Hollywood teaching in the 30s. This is all complete and total fabrication.
Is that really your idea of how to run a newspaper?
Nobody has been accused of using Tilly and Skinner's fake accent more often than Katharine Hepburn.
The film studios made sure their contractual stars used this audience-pleasing dialect.
And in a sense, nobody deserves this less. The only actor in history to win 4 Oscars, she was uniquely self-possessed and independent. The fake accent videos usually show her in The Philadelphia Story.
Hello, fancy seeing you here.
Orange juice? Certainly.
Don't tell me you've forsaken your beloved whiskey and whiskey.
Come around about noon tomorrow.
The stage role of this wealthy socialite was written for her. She held the rights to the play and let MGM film it only on the condition that she star in it and pick both her co-stars and director. Hollywood did not tell her how to speak. Hepburn was from New England.
I did Little Women, a true American New England girl, for which I think I was perfectly cast, she said modestly.
And her speech was influenced by her parents and by her time at Bryn Mawr College for Women.
My mother and father spoke very well, so that what I heard was pretty good. And when I went to Bryn Mawr, we were taught speech. We were made very conscious of how we sounded.
Now, it isn't clear how much her notion of good speech was accent and how much was diction, but her unique voice didn't come from dialect coaching.
Hepburn had trouble controlling her dialect, so she hired vocal coach Frances Robinson Duff, who taught her how to use the mid-Atlantic accent.
No, she went to Robinson Duff because of voice production issues.
I would get so excited that my voice would shoot way up in the top of my head. I studied with Frances Robinson Duff in New York. I studied voice, and you used to blow a candle out. So you'd have and feel her diaphragm go in, and I never understood a word of it.
And the actor she worshipped above all others was Midwesterner Spencer Tracy, her partner in life and in 9 movies, whose voice and persona were practically the opposite of hers.
Mostly, I think, females get advantages.
We don't want advantages.
Advantages?
Advantages. We don't want advantages. And we don't want prejudices.
Don't get excited, honey, and don't. Oh, you're giving me the Bryn Mawr rights? The Bryn Mawr rights?
He is my ideal.
So when
I mean, what he does, I would really like to be able to do.
Describing Katharine Hepburn, of all people, as a studio-manipulated phony is not just ignorant, but outrageously so.
The time to make up your mind about people is never.
Hepburn and many other Hollywood stars, like fellow New Englander Bette Davis, had high-class Northeastern accents. And Hollywood films of the 1930s featured a lot of high-class speech because it told a lot of stories about high-class people.
And now, Intermission.
Today's sponsor wants to help you for free, especially if you're looking to change your path in life or are just starting out planning a career. I certainly wish it had been around when I was younger. 40 hours work a week, 50 weeks a year for 40 years makes 80,000 hours, and that's a lot of time to make an impact. 80,000 hours is a non-profit with the mission of using research and evidence to help people find rewarding careers that aim at solving the world's most pressing problems.
Tell me, why are you interested in this job?
Putting this video together, I've waded through many lazy and under-researched articles and videos. 80,000 hours is the exact opposite. They've done over 10 years of research alongside academics at Oxford University into how to find a fulfilling career that does a lot of good. And what they've found might be quite different from what you'd think. Many resources on this topic only recommend the same old career paths that people often think have a high social impact, like being a doctor, a teacher, or charity worker. But it turns out those aren't your only options, and they may not be your best options either. The team at 80,000 Hours always tries to avoid unsupported generalizations. When they aren't sure of something, they say so. I was incredibly impressed at how open they are about the self-review processes they use to critique and continuously improve their work. They have a podcast that's absorbing whether you're planning a career or not, a job board with hundreds of open listings, and they even offer one-on-one advice. Their newsletter gives you updates on ideas and opportunities.
Think beyond mere routine typing and filing.
And if you sign up now, you'll get a free copy of their in-depth career guide sent to your inbox. Just go to 80,000hours.org/Dr. Jeff Lindsay.
And now, on with the show.
For the Hollywood moguls like Paramount's Adolph Zukor, it was of paramount importance to raise motion pictures from their humble origins in peep shows and Nickelodeons to a grand new art form fit for picture palaces and worthy of an Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Hollywood's pretensions have been on show annually at the Oscars ever since. Hollywood speech styles were not created by the imposition of a high-class accent from above. Hollywood was aspirational, but fundamentally its aspiration was bottom-up. It's been said of the Hollywood moguls, with their humble origins and experience of prejudice and worse, that they wanted to create an empire of their own. Hollywood from the start loved literary adaptations and historical subjects, many of them, of course, from Britain. According to John Hurt Fisher, it wasn't until the 1920s that American literature was generally taught in American schools and colleges. This naturally meant lots of British-type accents. Then as now, many felt that modern Middle American speech wasn't ideal for historical subjects.
You've come to Nottingham once too often. When this is over, my friend, there'll be no need for me to come again.
Did your friend smart his own death? He was your father.
And then there were all those British actors. Many of the fake accent videos use Cary Grant as their lead example of an American forced to use the fake Britishy accent, in apparent ignorance of the fact that he was from England. In fact, a major contributor to the Britishy sound of old movies was the presence of so many stars from the British Commonwealth. Not just Grant, but Charlie Chaplin, Stan Laurel, Ronald Colman, Joan Fontaine, Olivia de Havilland, Leslie Howard, Errol Flynn, Ray Milland, Vivian Leigh, Charles Lawton, Greer Garson, George Sanders, Merle Oberon, Claude Rains.
Oh, damn it! Bloody bugger!
Laurence Olivier, Basil Rathbone, Boris Karloff, and these are just stars before the Second World War. And of course, there were other accents too. The fake accent story implies a kind of enforced homogeneity.
Nearly all actors in old movies talk like that,
eliminating what makes their voice unhelpfully unique.
But on the contrary, old Hollywood speech was more diverse than the omnipresent general American of today. And different accents were used for different types of role. One of the fake accent videos gives this as an example of it from Mary Astor.
Mr. Archer was so alive yesterday, so solid and hearty.
But here she is in a different role, sounding far more like General American.
Sick and tired of doing without things I want. You and that doctor with your crazy ideas of what I can and what I can't eat. You're starving me.
Then as now, there were New York gangsters with New York accents. There were also accents of the American South. Several of the fake accent videos present Southern accents as examples of the supposed Tilly Skinner creation.
And Betty Davis.
Just to say you liked me like that once. You never wanted me to change.
Betty Davis here is in Jezebel, a tale of the Old South. And another video gives us this clip.
Mind if I ask you a personal question?
Why, yes, of course.
The clip features Cary Grant from England and Irene Dunne from Kentucky. If you just let the clip run a few seconds longer, you can hear the southern flavour of her accent.
Well, why on earth did you buy 27? Well, why on earth did you buy 27?
I don't think that's William Tilley's World English. And of course there was plenty of rhotic Middle American speech from stars like James Stewart.
I told you 100 times the fellas all call me Corn. I like that.
Judy Garland.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Gary Cooper.
Oh, I see a small Ohio farm boy becoming a great soldier. I see thousands of marching men, and I can see the beginning of a new nation, like Abraham Lincoln said.
Hollywood didn't forbid or suppress Middle American speech. It was appropriate for Middle American characters. You can even hear it from actors claimed to be the main exemplars of the fake accent, like Tyrone Power.
Why'd I bet my right arm that Margaret Joyce was going to play Violet?
Yeah.
It was all set, just like I told you. Girl of the North will absolutely and positively start shooting a week from next Monday.
Get out of here.
What's the matter?
Go on, beat it. You can't plant any more bunk in my column.
Even Katharine Hepburn was variable.
George? Oh, George. You can't be a first-rate writer.
It's better this way.
What have classes to do with it?
The so-called lower class.
Yet another source of British-flavoured English in Hollywood was all the European non-natives who may well have learned English on a British model. Bizarrely, The Atlantic gives as its lead example of the fake accent Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca, and makes no reference to the fact that she was Swedish.
You can't plant any more bunk in my column.
Play it, Sam. Play as time goes by.
I believe she learned her English in Hollywood and New York, and it's no surprise she didn't pick up General American. Casablanca, by the way, is practically a Rhoticity-free zone. Humphrey Bogart was an upper-class New Yorker.
I was born in New York City, if that'll help you any.
Dooley Wilson, an African-American, Claude Rains and Sidney Greenstreet were English, and Paul Henreid and Conrad Veidt were Austrian and German, and were based in England before they came to Hollywood. Many of the articles and videos lurch from dodgy linguistics into science fiction, telling us that the fake accent was favoured when old technology had no bass frequencies because it was so tinny and nasal.
This nasally clipped pronunciation is a vestige from the early days of radio. Receivers had very little bass technology at the time, and bass frequencies were difficult to hear.
And the technicians realized that the Mid-Atlantic accent's nasal qualities were easier to pick up.
No, no, Miss Lamont. Round tones, round tones. Now let me hear you read your line.
And I can't stand him.
And I can't stand him.
And I can't stand him.
So throughout its golden age, Hollywood resembled America in having no standard accent. During the Second World War, Kenyon and Knott published their famous Pronouncing Dictionary of American English on the model of Daniel Jones's English Pronouncing Dictionary for RP. But at that time, they didn't feel that standard American English could be represented by just one accent. They give pronunciations for 3 dialects, what they called Northern, Eastern and Southern. Only one of these is rhotic, namely their Northern accent, the forerunner of modern General American. And we can find in this dictionary practically all the features listed in the fake accent videos as the characteristics of that supposedly artificial speech. Final I, as in happy, distinct whine and whine, and in the Eastern and Southern accents, along with non-rhoticity, an RP-style rounded vowel in words like hot and watch, and a broadened bath vowel. To attribute all this to William Tilley and Edith Skinner and claim that nobody spoke like this natively would be ridiculous.
George?
Don't tell me you've forsaken your beloved whiskey and whiskey.
So why did Hollywood speech styles change and become increasingly General American? I think it would be a mistake to see this as social changes and increasing democratization, forcing Hollywood to abandon its pretentious, Britishy sounding fake accent.
After the Supreme Court ruling, the studios could no longer force actors to speak with a goofy voice.
Perhaps paradoxically, it was of course Hollywood itself that promoted the American dream, the myth of middle America and the regular American guy speaking regular General American.
Things like that can only happen in a country like America.
And as Hollywood grew and grew, sucking in talent from all over the United States, it naturally ceased to be a New York enclave, becoming instead a rival to, and perhaps a detractor from, the unique cultural domination of New York. Even before the Second World War, Kenyon estimated that rhotic Northerners heavily outnumbered non-rhotic Easterners and Southerners. Given that Middle American speech wasn't an obstacle to advancement, the way not speaking RP was an obstacle in Britain, I think it was just a matter of time before the majority accent became the standard. It's interesting that conspicuously elite speech fell out of favour roughly simultaneously throughout the English-speaking world. This includes not only America's Northeastern Elite, but also the RP-ish so-called cultivated speech of Australia. And in Britain itself, as I've explained elsewhere, the posh advanced RP flipped from prestige to stigma. And where has this story come from? Well, people like a story with characters, and here we have 2 foreign villains, a weird mastermind and his assistant, building their artificial monster accent and unleashing it upon ordinary men, women and children. Tilley and Skinner devised their accents and were no doubt influential, but the idea that they created the speech of Golden Age Hollywood is fake. I think the fake accent story is also trying to exploit and justify the resistance young audiences today feel towards the art of the past. The articles and videos generally take a patronising point of view, reassuring you that the reason you can't get into those Golden Age classics is because they're so phony, snobbish and un-American. Mass audiences always find the artificialities and cliches of their own time
superhero landing
easier to enjoy than the art and artifice of the past. But the best songs of today are not better than those of George Gershwin or Schubert. To be honest, it saddens me a bit to see young Americans spoon-fed nonsense about their linguistic history and encouraged to feel contempt for the magnificence of their cultural heritage.
There's a magnificence in you, Tracy. A magnificence that comes out of your eyes and your voice. You're lit from within, Tracy.